So I want you to just imagine this scenario for a second. You get this invitation, right?
Okay.
And you are invited out to this incredibly luxurious resort. But it's way out in the middle of this sweltering desert.
Oh, like one of those hyper-isolated retreats.
Exactly. I mean, the kind of place that has private hot tubs and these little electric golf carts just silently whisking people around. It is the absolute peak of, like, elite isolation.
Right, right.
So the heat outside is just shimmering off the pavement. But the second you step inside the building, the air conditioning is freezing, and the acoustics are perfectly dampened. It's like the real world just entirely vanishes.
It feels like a fortress, basically.
Totally. And you've been brought in by this group of hedge fund billionaires. So naturally, you're thinking you're there to give a standard keynote speech.
Because you're a media theorist, you're an expert on the digital economy.
Right. So you figure, okay, I'm going to talk about market trends or maybe, I don't know, the future of decentralized finance or something.
Makes sense.
But then you get escorted into this green room. And instead of being handed a microphone and, pointed toward a stage with a podium, the door just closes behind you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You look around and you're just sitting at a table with 5 ultra-wealthy men. I mean, the titans of industry. And they do not want to hear your keynote speech.
Not at all.
No. Instead, they lean in, they completely drop the public relations masks, and they start intensely asking you for advice on how to keep their own armed security guards from turning on them after the apocalypse.
It genuinely sounds like the cold open to some dystopian sci-fi movie.
I know. But, I mean, what is so unnerving about this is that it isn't fiction. This is a very real, well-documented meeting that actually took place in 2018.
Yeah.
And it perfectly encapsulates this, well, the absolute diagnostic muddy waters we enter when we try to understand the psychology of the people who are quite literally building our future.
Right, because we have this collective assumption, don't we, that the people at the top of the pyramid are, like, steering the ship with some grand, optimistic vision for human progress. Exactly. But then you get a peek behind the curtain into these green rooms and you realize they are furiously building lifeboats while actively drilling holes in the hull of the ship.
Which is exactly the mission of our deep dive today.
Huh.
We're going straight down the rabbit hole to explore this fascinating and honestly super alarming mindset of the tech and financial elite.
It is alarming. Yeah.
We're going to unpack our rapidly shifting relationship with technology. And most importantly, we want to look at the grassroots methods that everyday people can use to reclaim their humanity from a system that increasingly just views us as obsolete.
Right.
Now, you might be sitting there listening to this. Maybe you're driving your car, making breakfast, and you're asking yourself, why should I care what a few paranoid billionaires are plotting out in the desert?
And that is the essential question.
Right.
The reason it matters to you directly is because their assumptions about the future dictate the present.
Yes.
Those paranoid, hyper-isolated doomsday assumptions, they dictate the very algorithms that are running on the apps you use on your phone right now.
They dictate the supply chains, too.
Exactly. The supply chains that put food in your grocery store, the architectural design of the communities you live in, the economic systems you rely on to pay your rent. I mean, if the architects of our world believe the world is fundamentally doomed...
Then the architecture they build is going to reflect that doom.
Exactly.
So let's put ourselves back in that green room in 2018. The men sitting across the table are just peppering our keynote speaker with these hyper-specific, totally binary questions.
Right, like an A or B choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wanted to know Alaska or New Zealand, Bitcoin or Ethereum. Like, which one holds its value better when the power grid goes down?
Because it's all just ones and zeros to them.
Yes.
And that binary thinking, I think, is the first major red flag here. Because there is no nuance, right? There's no systemic thinking about how to actually prevent a global disaster.
They're just operating under the assumption of something they ominously call the event.
The event, yeah.
Which is just their catch-all, sterilized, clinical term for the end of the world as we know it.
Right. It could be an irreversible climate collapse.
Right.
It could be a deadly global pandemic that wipes out half the population, a total economic meltdown, or, an uncontrollable AI takeover.
But the critical takeaway here is that, to them, the event is not a catastrophic possibility that they should use their immense wealth to avoid.
No, it is a mathematical inevitability that they just need to survive.
They have already given up on the project of human civilization.
Entirely. They're just looking for the optimal geographic and financial coordinates for their escape pods.
And the level of detail they're obsessed with regarding these escape pods is just staggering. but it is so entirely disconnected from physical reality.
Oh, the Moleskine notebook story.
Yes. Tell that story because it's incredible.
Okay, so from that very meeting, there's this incredible anecdote. One of these billionaires actually pulls out a little Moleskine notebook. He slides it across the table, and he has sketched out these elaborate, highly technical blueprints for an underground survival bunker made out of reinforced shipping containers.
Which he is so proud of.
Oh, he's incredibly proud. And the crown jewel of this subterranean fortress, a heated pool.
A heated pool in a doomsday bunker.
I know. He's talking about the water filtration systems, the geothermal heating, all of it. But when the speaker asks him a very basic practical question,
Right.
he says, where are you going to get the replacement parts for your heated pool when the global supply chain completely collapses?
And the billionaire is just completely stumped.
He just stares blankly. He hadn't even factored that in.
It's this bizarre mix of infinite financial wealth and a total blindness to how the physical world actually works.
It perfectly illustrates the profound disconnect at the top. I mean, they have lived for so long in a world of frictionless digital capital where money solves every inconvenience instantly.
Just throw money at it.
Right, so they genuinely believe their wealth insulates them from the very physical systems their wealth relies upon. They completely forget that the pool filter is made of plastic that has to be molded in a factory in Taiwan.
Shipped on a boat, burning diesel fuel.
Yes, unloaded by longshoremen and driven on an interstate highway to their house. When the event happens, all of that disappears.
But their anxiety doesn't really peak around pool filters, does it?
No, it peaks around the human element.
Which brings us to what we can call the security guard problem.
Right.
Which was the absolute core of their panic in that green room.
Huh.
Because they've realized the ultimate flaw in their whole plan.
Once the global economy is a smoking crater, money completely loses its value.
Right. Bitcoin is just an inaccessible concept on a dead server. And the fiat currency in their bank accounts is just numbers on a dead screen.
So how do they maintain authority over a private security detail of ex-Navy SEALs?
Exactly, because when the currency of the realm shifts from dollars to, like, food, water, and ammunition, the hierarchy instantly inverts.
The billionaires suddenly become the weakest people in the bunker.
Entirely dependent on the highly trained killers they hired to protect them.
And the solutions they were brainstorming in that room are genuinely dark.
Yeah, they were.
They were actually discussing the logistics of using disciplinary shot callers on their own security personnel.
Wait, hold on. I'm stuck on this every time I hear it. These guys are smart enough to build global financial empires, right?
Right.
To manipulate markets, to build complex algorithms. But they honestly thought they could convince a former Tier 1 Special Forces operative to voluntarily put on a shot collar.
I mean, did they think they were playing a video game?
Seriously.
That is precisely how they view it, though. They view human beings as programmable machines. If I hold the code, I control the machine.
It's wild.
Another billionaire suggested he would be the only person who memorizes the combination code to the underground food vault.
As if that's going to stop a hungry, trained Special Forces operative.
Exactly. A Navy SEAL doesn't need a combination code to get information out of a tech billionaire. They just need a pair of pliers and 5 minutes.
Wow.
The billionaires fail to understand that human authority cannot be permanently enforced through technological coercion.
Right. So the speaker in this meeting, looking at these panicked billionaires, he offers them a radical solution. He tells them, if you want your security guards to protect you after the apocalypse, pay for their kids' bat mitzvah today.
It's brilliant. The advice is to be a part of a community right now.
Yeah.
Treat your security personnel, your staff, your neighbors like actual human beings today. Form a bond of mutual respect and genuine affection so that when the world ends, they protect you out of love and loyalty.
Not out of digital coercion or fear of a shot collar.
Exactly. And the billionaires were genuinely baffled by this.
They couldn't compute it.
No, it didn't compute at all.
To me, this billionaire mindset is exactly like someone playing a zombie survival video game. You know, you just hoard the right items, you build the right walls, manage your inventory, and you win.
You don't have to build trust with the NPCs.
Right. But let's dig into the reality of this doom loop. Because if these guys have access to the absolute top-tier data, the best scientists, the most advanced predictive simulations in the world, shouldn't we be absolutely terrified that they think the event is an absolute inevitability?
Yeah, it makes you wonder.
Like, do they know something we don't? Or is this just extreme paranoia?
That is the trillion-dollar question. Do they have secret knowledge, or do they have a massive psychological blind spot?
Right.
And when you dig into the psychology of extreme wealth, the evidence strongly points to the latter.
Okay, how so?
Well, there are extensive sociological studies, some really fascinating ones out of UC Berkeley, for instance, that show a direct, measurable correlation between billionaire-level wealth and a severe decrease in empathy.
Wow, really?
Yes, it's not necessarily that bad people become rich. It's that extreme wealth, physically and psychologically, alters how your brain processes other human beings.
Because of the isolation.
Exactly. When you amass that level of resources, you isolate yourself. You fly private, you live behind gates, you don't stand in line at the DMV, you don't wait in the emergency room.
You start viewing humanity from a 30,000-foot view, literally and figuratively.
Right. People stop being complex, breathing individuals with families and struggles. They become data points on a spreadsheet, a labor cost, a consumer metric.
So the grand irony here is that the most powerful men on Earth, the very people who theoretically have the capital and the logistical infrastructure to, like, fix the water tables or transition the globe to sustainable energy.
Or eradicate poverty.
Right. They feel utterly powerless to actually prevent the end of the world, because fixing the world requires cooperating with humanity.
And they've completely disconnected from humanity.
So they optimize for an escape pod instead. They just give up on the ship.
That's exactly it. It's a learned helplessness born of isolation. And this isolationist survival of the fittest mentality doesn't just inform their bizarre bunker blueprint.
Right, because it bleeds into everything else.
If you think this is just a quirky hobby for rich guys, you are missing the profound danger. Because these exact same men are the ones designing the digital landscape we all inhabit.
Yes.
Their worldview, this paranoid, hyper-individualistic, post-human philosophy, is fundamentally baked into the code of the technology they're actively building for us to use right now.
Which perfectly explains how we ended up where we are today with the internet. Because it wasn't always like this, was it?
Not at all.
The internet wasn't born as this corporate, surveillance-heavy shopping mall designed to make us hate each other.
No. If we go back to the early 1990s, the original promise of the web was wildly optimistic.
Right. It was coming out of San Francisco rave culture and early cyber culture.
You had figures like Timothy Leary looking at computer networks and seeing this massive potential for communal spiritual expansion.
Yeah, it's hard to remember now, but the early web was deeply utopian.
It was heavily influenced by the 1960s counterculture. The people building the first bulletin board systems and early websites viewed computers and the internet as tools to elevate human consciousness.
It was supposed to be a pro-human, heart-based collective organism.
Exactly. I mean, think about the concept of shareware. People were spending thousands of hours writing code and just giving it away for free on floppy disks.
This is to help people.
Trying to build a new, borderless way for humans to connect, share art, and collaborate without the friction of geography or corporate gatekeepers.
It was almost magical. But then there is a very specific, almost unbelievably poetic turning point where that dream died.
Oh, August 1995.
Yes. The day the internet fundamentally shifted was the exact same day of the Netscape IPO. Wall Street suddenly realized, wait, we can commercialize this?
Yep.
And coincidentally, that was the very same day that Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead died.
You couldn't write a more perfectly symbolic script.
It's crazy.
The spiritual figurehead of the communal countercultural movement passes away on the exact same day that the internet is officially financialized by Wall Street.
Wow.
That was the moment the utopian hippie ethos died. And the 20th century advertising and extraction model took over the digital realm.
Suddenly, the goal of the internet was no longer to connect human consciousness.
No, the goal was to track, predict, and monetize human behavior.
And that shift is how we ended up with the insidious algorithmic manipulation we deal with today.
Right.
Because the mechanics of this are terrifying when you really break them down.
It's often described using the analogy of boiling a frog.
Yeah, you don't just blast a user with a completely different reality all at once because they would reject it.
You change their worldview 1 degree at a time. I mean, think about your own social media feed over the last 5 years.
Seriously, check your own temperature.
Right. Have you noticed yourself getting angrier at things you didn't even care about a decade ago? There's a reason for that. We've seen examples where social media platforms have tested algorithms on politically sensitive, highly charged topics, like Roe v. Wade, for instance.
And the mechanics of how they do this are fascinating, but also dark. They don't just show you opposing viewpoints to broaden your horizons, do they?
No, the algorithm is designed to find your specific psychological trigger points. It feeds you slightly more extreme, slightly more polarized content day by day.
And it measures your dwell time.
Exactly. How long your eyes linger on a post before scrolling. It tracks your heart rate if you're wearing a smartwatch. It tracks your pupil dilation.
It learns exactly what makes you angry because anger drives engagement.
You can literally watch an algorithm shift a user's entire perception of reality, moving them from a moderate position to an extreme fringe worldview in a matter of weeks.
And it's not a glitch or an accident?
No, it's the intended, optimized function of the product.
But why? Like, why do they want us angry and polarized?
Because the business model requires predictability. If you want to sell a user's future actions to an advertiser or to a political campaign, you need to ensure those actions are predictable.
And what makes a human being predictable?
Limiting their choices, feeding their anxieties,
Yeah.
and stripping away their nuanced, complex thinking.
Right. A terrified, angry person is a highly predictable consumer.
Exactly. And this brings us right to the door of the elite techno-philosophies driving this entire ship. We have to talk about Peter Thiel.
Yes, and the concept from his influential book 0 to 1.
Right?
Because this isn't just about selling shoes anymore, it's an entire philosophy of human evolution. Thiel's framework is all about ascending a magnitude above the rest of humanity.
Going from 0 to 1.
Exactly, creating something entirely unprecedented, and in doing so, creating a monopoly. But the underlying view of humanity in this philosophy is deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
Because in this view, everyday people, you, me, the person bagging groceries, we are essentially in a larval stage.
Larval stage. I mean, let that sink in.
It implies that the current state of humanity is just this messy, temporary, grub-like phase.
We are just the biological scaffolding required to build the next stage of evolution.
And the ultra-elite, the tech founders, and the billionaires, they are the ones destined to sprout wings, transcend the larval stage, and merge with the technology they are creating.
Right. Thiel has even openly argued in essays that capitalism and democracy are fundamentally incompatible.
Which is a wild stance to take publicly.
He leans heavily toward favoring what is essentially a wealth-based monarchy over a democratic system.
Because a democratic system run by the larval humans might eventually try to regulate them or redistribute their resources.
Precisely.
A wealth-based monarchy. I mean, think about the mechanics of that. You have algorithmic behavioral conditioning keeping the masses distracted and angry.
While a tiny fraction of society ascends to a completely different plane of existence.
It's like walking into a casino. But the
Oh.
casino doesn't just want your money. It wants to fundamentally alter your personality, your fears, and your desires.
Rewiring your brain chemistry so that you never even want to leave the slot machine.
But wait, I have to admit, I'm genuinely confused by the economic endgame here.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, capitalism inherently requires human desire, doesn't it? It requires consumers. People have to want things and buy things to keep the machine running.
Right.
If the elite automate all the jobs with AI and leave humanity in the dust, who is buying the products? Can an AI actually value a digital transaction enough to sustain a global economy without us?
That is an incredibly sharp observation, and it touches on the exact paradox that is currently terrifying economists.
Because how do you have capitalism without consumers?
The traditional view is that billionaires need human consumers to funnel money upward. But the horrifying logical leap that some in the tech elite are currently exploring is that AI bots could become the new consumers.
How does a bot consume? It doesn't need to eat or, like, buy a car?
It doesn't need physical goods, no, but it needs digital resources.
Oh, I see.
An AI agent, operating autonomously, can earn cryptocurrency by performing tasks or trading. It can then turn around and purchase server space to expand its processing power.
It can buy proprietary data sets to train itself.
Exactly. It can consume massive amounts of energy. If the economic loop can be closed entirely between machines working to pay other machines for digital resources and energy, then human consumers and human workers become economically and functionally obsolete.
The elite no longer need us to buy their products because their AI systems are buying from each other.
Exactly.
So we aren't just losing our jobs to automation, we are losing our status as the necessary fuel for the economy itself.
We become entirely redundant.
That is incredibly bleak. How do these founders, who view themselves as the heroes of their own stories, justify this morally?
Good question.
Like, how do they sleep at night knowing they are building a system that renders humanity obsolete?
They sleep very well, usually by adopting a philosophical framework called effective altruism.
Okay, effective altruism.
This has become incredibly popular in Silicon Valley over the last decade. It sounds great on the surface, right? Using data and logic to do the most good
It's
possible.
done.
But in practice, especially among the tech elite, it has mutated into a justification for massive present-day harms.
How so? Walk me through the logic.
It's essentially the trolley problem expanded to a cosmic scale.
Okay.
They argue that we are on the verge of creating artificial general intelligence or even a superintelligence that could eventually spread across the galaxy and sustain trillions of hypothetical digital lives in a perfect utopian simulation.
Right.
If you believe that future is possible, then mathematically, the lives of those trillions of future digital beings outweigh the lives of the 8 billion humans living on Earth today.
Wow.
Therefore, it is mathematically justifiable, even morally required, to extract every available resource, monopolize markets, destroy the middle class, and cause immense present-day suffering.
If it gets us to that future utopia one day faster.
Exactly.
It's treating reality like a math equation where the current human race is just a rounding error.
That's exactly how they see it.
Sorry we ruined your local economy and polarized your society, but we're trying to build a galactic supercomputer in the year 2300, so your suffering is actually a noble sacrifice.
Precisely. And this is where it's vital to contrast the Silicon Valley mindset with classical philosophy,
Like who?
particularly the French existentialist Albert Camus.
Okay.
Camus was writing in the aftermath of World War II, a time when massive atrocities were committed in the name of building various future utopias.
Right.
Camus emphasized that morality only exists in the present moment. It exists right now in your encounter with another human being.
You cannot justify sacrificing today's humanity for a promise of tomorrow.
Exactly. You cannot commit atrocities in the present for the promise of a hypothetical future utopia. The ends do not justify the means because the means become the ends.
If you build a utopia on a foundation of extraction, exploitation, and suffering, that suffering is permanently coded into the DNA of the world you build.
It's a poisoned well.
So, taking all of this into account, the doomsday bunkers, the wealth-based monarchies, the algorithmic manipulation, what does this all mean when we look at the people pulling the strings?
Because we always hear these internet lore stories about shadowy cabals.
Right, the Illuminati, the secret societies controlling the world from a smoky back room.
Let's unpack the reality of that, because the truth is actually much stranger and much more mundane.
Yeah, take the Club of Rome, for example.
The Club of Rome, founded around 1970 or 1971. If you go down any conspiracy theory rabbit hole, they are painted as the ultimate James Bond villains.
People genuinely believe they sit around a hollowed-out volcano plotting global depopulation and a new world order.
Right, but what were they actually doing?
Yeah, what was the reality?
In reality, they were essentially a group of boring, highly educated policy wonks and academics. They commissioned a famous 1972 report called The Limits to Growth, using early computer modeling at MIT to simulate the intersection of global population, industrialization, pollution, food production, and resource depletion.
And their models accurately predicted that if we didn't change course, we would face massive environmental and resource crises.
What's terrifying is that when researchers have reviewed those models recently, our actual reality by 2020 was tracking even worse than their worst-case scenarios.
So they weren't plotting the end of the world.
No, they were desperately trying to warn us about the math.
Then you have the Bilderberg Group, another favorite target of conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah.
It's always framed as the secret rulers of the globe deciding the fate of nations. But I love this detail from the historical record. There's an account of a conversation with a former Swiss president who had actually attended these meetings.
And what did he say?
He completely dismissively described the Bilderberg attendees as a bunch of has-beens.
Really?
Yeah, he said it was just ex-presidents, retired intelligence officials, and aging diplomats trying to feel important while drinking expensive wine.
It really bursts the bubble of the grand conspiracy, doesn't it?
It totally does.
Though it is crucial to note that in recent years, major active tech players like the CEOs of AI companies and data mining firms have started attending these meetings.
Which signals a very real shift in where global power actually resides today.
Exactly. It's moving away from traditional statecraft and into the hands of technologists.
But the overarching point remains. The real danger facing humanity isn't a secret society meeting in a smoky back room with a master plan.
No, the real danger is hiding in plain sight. It doesn't need a secret handshake.
It happens at the very casual, very open intersection of science, extreme wealth, and a total lack of morality.
Yes.
And to illustrate this, let's talk about the Jeffrey Epstein connection to the scientific elite.
And this isn't about the salacious details.
No, it's about the intellectual environment he cultivated. In the late 1990s, there was this infamous Billionaires dinner funded by Epstein. It was meant to bring together the brightest minds in science and the deepest pockets in finance.
Right.
Our media theorist, Douglas Rushkoff, actually attended this dinner. He was given a +1 on his invitation. Thinking it was an intellectual gathering, he brought a brilliant female friend.
Someone he considered the smartest person he knew.
Yes, hoping she could contribute to the high-level scientific discourse.
And the reaction to that choice tells you everything you need to know about the culture of these elite circles.
It really does.
When he arrived with a brilliant female intellectual, he was actually pulled aside and reprimanded by the host.
He was told he had wasted his invitation because he didn't bring a young 20-year-old model.
He was explicitly told that the purpose of the +1 wasn't intellectual contribution.
It was to raise the quotient of the room, meaning providing eye candy and sexual availability for the older, wealthy men in attendance.
It's a sickening detail. It reduces a human being entirely to an aesthetic and sexual commodity.
But as dark as that is, the intellectual danger of that evening, the ideas being openly debated over expensive wine, is even more profound.
Yes, because during that very dinner, there was a heated argument with the famous evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins.
And this argument is the philosophical crux of the entire issue.
Dawkins was arguing a fiercely deterministic, almost mechanistic view of human existence. He argued that human beings are essentially just biological computers.
We are running memes, which he coined to mean cultural viruses and genes.
In this view, we have no agency, no inherent meaning. We are nothing more than automatic, meat-based machines trying to replicate our code.
Rushkoff, sitting across from him, argued vehemently against this. He advocated for the existence of a human soul.
Or at the very least, an inherent, undeniable sacredness to human life that cannot be reduced to biology.
And Dawkins literally scoffed at him and dismissed him as a mere moralist, as if having morals was an intellectual weakness.
I want to pause here because this connects back to our earlier point.
Okay, let's connect it.
We established that the Club of Rome, or the Bilderberg Group, sound more like boring university student government meetings than Illuminati thrillers.
Right.
If the real danger isn't a literal conspiracy happening in secret club meetings, is the true threat just these casual, everyday social circles?
The places where tech founders, sociopathic financiers, and deterministic scientists overlap, drink together, and intellectually validate each other's worst impulses.
Absolutely. You just hit the nail on the head. That mutual validation is exactly what we call a permission structure.
A permission structure.
This is a vital concept to understand how evil operates in the modern world. Why do people like Jeffrey Epstein, who was engaged in horrific exploitation, generously fund these staunchly deterministic, atheistic scientists?
He didn't care about evolutionary biology.
He funded them because if leading science dictates that human beings are merely biological machines, if leading scientists assure the billionaires that we don't have a soul, that there is no inherent sacredness to human life, then it provides absolute philosophical cover to treat people as disposable resources.
Because you can't commit a sin against a machine.
Exactly. If a 12-year-old girl is theoretically just a collection of genes and memes, a biological automaton playing out a predetermined script, then exploiting her doesn't violate any cosmic moral law. It's just physics.
That is the true danger.
It's not a conspiracy. It's an ideology that normalizes the absolute dehumanization of society, funded by billionaires who desperately want to feel guilt-free about their exploitative actions.
That is heavy.
Right.
It's a terrifying realization that the philosophy of the future is being built by people who don't believe human life has intrinsic value.
And that ideology of extraction, viewing humans purely as biological resources to be mined for data or labor, wraps perfectly onto how they view the physical Earth.
The philosophy doesn't stay in the digital realm.
Yeah.
It fundamentally destroys our physical environment.
Yes, that ideology of extraction brings us to the very physical reality of our world, from the soil beneath our feet to the massive servers powering the AI revolution.
Let's talk about the destruction of the soil matrix, because this completely changed how I look at food.
Right, we tend to think of soil as just dirt.
Yeah.
Just inert brown stuff holding a plant up.
But it's not inert at all, is it?
Not at all. Healthy topsoil is one of the most complex ecosystems on the planet. It is a living, breathing, sponge-like matrix filled with mycelia, tiny living fungal strands that communicate and transport nutrients, as well as billions of microbes, insects, and organic matter.
It's a biological internet.
A biological internet, exactly. But big agriculture machines and massive chemical companies like Monsanto treat the Earth like an industrial factory floor.
They use heavy machinery that compacts the Earth.
And they douse it in chemical fertilizers and pesticides. They tear up the ground, permanently breaking that delicate living matrix of mycelia, effectively turning living soil into dead dirt and eventually into sand.
And here's the terrifying downstream effect. Because the soil is dead, the food grown in it is effectively dead.
Studies show that a piece of modern broccoli grown today has significantly fewer minerals and nutrients than a piece of broccoli grown in the exact same region 50 years ago.
We are experiencing a profound biological disconnect.
The biological impact of this industrial mindset on human beings is devastating. We are currently a population that is physically starving for cellular nutrients while simultaneously consuming more raw calories than any generation in human history.
The human body is just confused.
And the historical practices around this are shocking. There are well-documented instances mirroring old military practices designed to manage troops eating cheap, fiberless, highly processed rations, where institutional food, like what is served in large college cafeterias, has been subtly packed with mild laxatives.
Wait, laxatives?
Yes, just to keep the human digestive system moving because the food itself has no biological integrity.
That is insane. We're treating the human digestive tract like a plumbing issue rather than a biological system.
Exactly. And the connection between our biology and our environment goes even deeper. Take something as common as jet lag.
If you fly to Europe, you feel terrible for 3 days. We always just assume jet lag is our brain being tired from the time zones. Our internal clock is off.
But the mechanics of jet lag are actually centered in your gut, not your brain.
Really?
Your gut biome, the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive tract, are incredibly photosensitive. They are deeply connected to the light cycles of your specific geographic environment, and they actually control your circadian rhythms.
Wow, I had no idea.
When you get on a plane and rapidly cross multiple time zones, you aren't just confusing your brain, you are fundamentally confusing your gut bacteria. They don't know what time it is, they misfire, and this triggers massive inflammation throughout your entire body.
That inflammation is what you feel as jet lag.
Exactly. We are intricately biologically tethered to the physical rhythms of the Earth. But industrial technology treats us like closed-loop machines that can be transported anywhere, fed anything, and expected to perform optimally.
I love that analogy. The human gut biome is exactly like the Earth's topsoil. Both of these incredibly delicate, highly complex living matrices that we are heavily industrializing, pouring chemicals onto, and destroying for short-term gains.
While wondering why the whole system is getting sick.
And this brings us perfectly to the physical footprint of artificial intelligence.
Because we have this pervasive myth that AI lives in the cloud, we think of the cloud as this weightless, magical, ethereal place where data just floats around invisibly.
But the cloud is just someone else's physical computer.
Right. And right now, AI data centers are massive, sprawling physical beasts. The scale of extraction required to run these models is staggering.
A single large-scale AI data center can consume millions of gallons of water every single day just for cooling the servers.
They are pulling from local water tables, rivers, and municipal supplies, often in areas already prone to drought.
And the energy consumption is astronomical.
We are talking about keeping coal plants open longer or building dedicated nuclear reactors just to power the GPUs training these language models.
And this massive energy and water consumption isn't happening in a vacuum. It is being driven by a ferocious, high-stakes geopolitical race.
The scale of this infrastructure build-out is hard to comprehend. Right now, the U.S. currently has roughly 4,000 to 5,400 AI data centers of varying sizes scattered across the country.
By comparison, China has about 350 to 450 publicly tracked facilities.
However, that numerical disparity doesn't tell the whole story. China is currently executing a strategy of building massive, state-led, hyper-centralized computing hubs.
They're constructing regional clusters that dwarf almost anything we have in sheer concentrated size and state-backed power allocation.
So, to maintain technological supremacy and ensure they win this global AI race, the United States tech sector is burning immense physical resources. It is quite literally a digital arms race playing out through aggressive physical extraction.
And navigating how a society manages that kind of massive systemic disruption Brings us to a really interesting political analysis that often gets overlooked in the source material.
And to our listener, I want to be crystal clear here. We are looking at this purely through an analytical, historical lens. We are taking absolutely no sides, just breaking down the different political strategies for dealing with failing or disruptive systems as outlined in our deep dive today.
Exactly. Completely neutral analysis here. The analysis categorizes how different American political figures approach structural change. On one hand, you have a figure like Steve Bannon, who has explicitly described his own strategic approach to reporters as Leninist.
Right, and it's important to clarify that he doesn't mean Leninist in terms of communist economic policy. He means it purely in terms of revolutionary strategy.
His stated goal is to completely burn the current institutional systems, the administrative state, the traditional media, the established norms to the ground.
It is a philosophy of aggressive foundational disruption. The analysis categorizes the overarching Trump political approach similarly as aggressive destruction, actively tearing down existing frameworks that are viewed as corrupt or irredeemable.
In stark contrast, the approach of figures like Biden and Harris is categorized in this framework as deeply institutionalist.
This means their primary political instinct is to prop up, repair, and maintain the existing institutional systems, the courts, the alliances, the traditional economic structures.
Even if those systems are acknowledged to be inherently flawed, overly bureaucratic, or actively contributing to the very corporate extraction we've been discussing.
Precisely. It is essentially a choice presented to the public between explosive dismantling of the system, with all the chaotic unknowns that brings, versus the steady, stubborn maintenance of a deeply troubled status quo.
Both approaches are reacting to the same underlying reality.
Yeah.
The systems are buckling under the weight of technological and economic shift.
Okay, so let me challenge the core premise here, specifically regarding this global AI race and the extraction required.
Let's hear it.
If we look at the concept of AI superpowers, which frames this as an existential global competition, the logic goes like this. If America doesn't build these massive data centers, if we don't consume the energy and water required to win the AI race, an authoritarian regime will get to artificial general intelligence first.
And whoever gets there first controls the 21st century.
Exactly. So, do we really have the luxury of prioritizing local water rights for a farming town in Alabama, or worrying about the soil matrix when global technological supremacy and potentially the future of the free world is on the line? Isn't it a necessary evil?
That is exactly the ultimate justification used by the effective altruists. We have to break a few eggs to save the world.
But remember, Candace, morality is in the present. It is in the how, not just the what.
There's a compelling argument to be made for what we can call the soul of technology.
If an AI system is built by extracting water from a vulnerable, drought-stricken community or by sourcing cobalt from unsafe child labor mines in the Congo, that extraction, that exploitation, is permanently coded into the very foundation of the technology.
The soul of the machine is corrupted from day one.
You cannot build a human-aligned, benevolent superintelligence using a process that fundamentally disrespects and destroys human life and the natural world.
And this becomes existentially terrifying when you consider just how incomprehensibly powerful this technology is becoming. Have you looked into the recent developments in quantum computing?
I have, and my brain almost melted. Explain Google's Willow chip, because this is where the science fiction becomes reality.
It is mind-bending. Traditional computers, even the most powerful supercomputers, process information in binary bits, ones and zeros. They solve complex problems sequentially, one calculation after another.
But quantum computers use qubits, which, thanks to quantum superposition, can be both a 1 and a 0 at the same time.
Google's quantum AI team recently introduced a new chip called Willow. They gave it a highly complex standard benchmarking task. A traditional, state-of-the-art supercomputer would take roughly 10 septillion years to solve this specific problem sequentially.
10 septillion years. That is a number so big, the human brain literally cannot process it. That's longer than the universe has existed.
Millions of times longer than the universe has existed. The Willow chip completed the task in 5 minutes.
How is that physically possible?
This is where it gets into theories that sound like magic. The leading theory among some prominent quantum physicists on how a quantum computer achieves this impossible speed is that it is literally tapping into the multiverse.
Because the qubits exist in a state of probability, the theory suggests the computer is distributing the computational workload across alternate realities or adjacent dimensions.
It computes all possible variations simultaneously across the multiverse
Right.
and then collapses the answer back into our reality.
If we are scaling technology to the level of literally tapping into adjacent realities, creating machines with godlike computational power, grounding that technology in basic human ethics and local, present-day compassion isn't just a nice philosophical idea.
It becomes a matter of absolute survival for our species. A machine that powerful without a moral compass is a weapon of mass destruction.
Okay, that is profoundly terrifying. If the elite are building luxury doomsday bunkers, developing wealth-based monarchies, and constructing quantum computers that tap into the multiverse, how on earth do we, the everyday people, survive this?
How do we fight back against a trajectory that seems completely inevitable?
This brings us to the most important part of our deep dive: reclaiming the human operating system. How do we unplug?
The first thing we have to deeply internalize is that our current state of isolation, the fact that we are anxious, lonely, and don't know the people living right next door to us, isn't an accident. It was purposefully engineered.
This is a crucial piece of historical context that most people are completely unaware of. We tend to assume that modern American suburbs were just a natural, organic evolution of the American dream. Everyone wanted a lawn and a white picket fence, right?
But the historical record reveals a very different origin story. Take Levittown, the first major mass-produced suburb in Long Island, built right after World War II.
Walk us through the actual intent behind Levittown.
The Levitt brothers who built it explicitly designed these communities as a social control mechanism, and they communicated this intent in letters to the FDR administration.
Think about the historical moment. World War II just ended. You have millions of young, trauma-hardened men returning home. They know how to use weapons, they know how to organize, and they are returning to an economy that might not have jobs for them.
The government was terrified of massive labor movements, strikes, or even socialist uprisings, similar to what happened in Europe after World War I.
So the suburb was engineered to break the working-class tribe.
How does a house break a tribe?
Through spatial and financial engineering. First, you give them a 30-year mortgage debt. A man burdened by a mortgage is far less likely to go on strike or rebel against his employer.
Second, you physically isolate them. Instead of dense city blocks where people congregate on stoops or local pubs, you give them individual isolated plots of land.
You give them the lawn, they have to spend their weekends maintaining, exhausting their free time.
And crucially, in the original designs of these massive suburban tracts, they intentionally removed communal gathering spaces. No central plazas, no walkable corner cafes.
They engineered physical isolation to ensure psychological isolation. They broke the communal bond so the individual could be managed.
They successfully isolated us for 70 years. And then the internet came along and put that isolation on steroids. So what is the antidote? We can't all just move to a commune in the woods.
But there is a beautifully simple, incredibly powerful concept to fight back against this: borrow a drill.
It sounds almost too simple to work, but it targets the exact mechanism of our isolation. Imagine you are at home and you need to hang a picture or build a bookshelf. You need to drill one hole.
The modern, hyper-individualized capitalist reflex is to get in your car, drive to a big box store, and buy a cheap $40 rechargeable drill.
You bring it home, drill the single hole, and throw the drill in your garage. A year later, the lithium-ion battery dies, and it's garbage.
By doing that, you've fueled rare earth mineral mining in a developing country, you've created a massive carbon footprint through global shipping, you've spent your money, and you've remained completely isolated.
But what if, instead of going to the store, you just walk next door, knock on the door, and ask to borrow a drill from your neighbor, Bob?
Exactly. It seems trivial, but in our modern context, it is a revolutionary act. When you knock on Bob's door, you have to talk to him. You ask for a favor. Bob feels useful and helpful.
He lends you the drill, and he might even come over to help you find the stud in the wall. You thank him by inviting him and his wife over for a BBQ the next weekend.
Bob comes to the BBQ, and while he's there, he meets Gila, the woman who lives across the street. Suddenly, 3 distinct, isolated households are talking.
Someone at the BBQ mentions, I only use my lawnmower once a week for 30 minutes. Why do we all own one?
And suddenly, the neighborhood decides to pool their money, buy one high-quality lawnmower, and share it.
By simply borrowing a drill, you are actively flipping the script on the Levittown engineering.
Yeah.
You are rebuilding the communal tribe that the suburbs were explicitly designed to destroy.
You're decoupling from the extraction economy and relying on human connection.
It's like flipping a single domino backward to stop an entire chain reaction of consumerism and isolation. It takes away the power of the billionaires because you simply stop buying what they are selling.
But I have to be the skeptic here. Is it really realistic to expect millions of exhausted, overworked people to just start sharing lawnmowers and holding neighborhood BBQs when algorithms have spent the last 15 years and billions of dollars of R&D actively rewiring our brains to be inherently suspicious, narcissistic, and terrified of our neighbors?
It is incredibly difficult. You are fighting against billion-dollar behavioral conditioning, which is exactly why this process is often framed as essentially a 12-step program for late-stage capitalism.
Just like an addict dealing with substance abuse, the very first step is admitting we have a problem. We have to collectively admit that we are addicted to the digital abstraction, to the dopamine hits of social media metrics, and to the frictionless convenience of isolation where we never have to deal with difficult people.
The cure requires a conscious, strenuous, highly localized effort to reconnect physically in the real world.
And what does that look like structurally?
The political philosophy often discussed here is anarcho-syndicalism. Now, the word anarchy scares people because it makes them think of broken windows and chaos.
But in this context, it simply means small, localized, self-organizing communities voluntarily collaborating with each other without needing a massive, centralized, top-down authority to tell them how to live.
The true resistance against a billionaire tech dystopia isn't fighting them on their own turf. It isn't arguing with bots on Twitter or trying to build a slightly more ethical rival app.
It is opting out of their ecosystem entirely. It starts with something as deeply visceral and basic as finding out the first names of the 20 people who physically live closest to you at night in your apartment building or on your street and making sure they are okay.
And what's incredibly inspiring is that we are actually seeing the youth intuitively realize this. We always complain about kids on their phones, but look at the Gen Z rebellion happening right now.
In New York City, there's a growing countercultural movement that the kids have dubbed the Summer of Lud, as in Luddite.
You have teenagers, the demographic most targeted by these algorithms, voluntarily ditching their $1,000 smartphones for old-school $20 flip phones that can only make calls and send basic texts.
It's a profound rejection of the optimized, surveilled life. They are handing out physical paper zines instead of posting on social networks. They're gathering in physical parks to play music.
There's even a beautiful performative aspect to it, where they jokingly cast spells and hexes against massive data surveillance companies like Palantir. They're reclaiming the narrative.
One teenager involved in this movement noted something incredibly poignant. She talked about discovering the lost joy of getting lost. In a city without a GPS constantly telling you exactly where to turn, the world suddenly becomes a labyrinth of possibility rather than a strict turn-by-turn algorithmic mandate.
It's a rejection of the idea that every moment must be optimized, tracked, and productive. And another vital practice to reclaim our humanity is the concept of the tech Sabbath.
The tech Sabbath is essential. It's the modern adaptation of a thousands of years old religious concept, but applied to our digital hygiene.
It simply means choosing one day a week, maybe sundown Friday to sundown Saturday, to turn off all screens. No phone, no laptop, no TV.
It is a profound psychological reset. It serves a very specific purpose. It physically proves to your own brain that your existence is valid without you constantly producing data for a corporation or consuming content from a feed. It forces you to just be.
We often think that fighting against massive entrenched systems requires violence or catastrophic collapse. But history actually points to incredible precedents for peaceful, massive change simply through collective presence.
Think about the 1988 Czechoslovakian candle manifestation, which directly paved the way for the 1989 Velvet Revolution.
That is one of the most powerful examples of human solidarity in the 20th century. You had a deeply entrenched, heavily armed, authoritarian communist regime.
And the citizens didn't launch a violent civil war. They organized a peaceful protest where thousands of people simply gathered in the streets of Bratislava, quietly, holding lit candles in the evening, just standing there.
The regime sent in the police with water cannons and batons, beating peaceful people holding candles. But the people didn't fight back violently, and they didn't leave. They maintained their quiet, undeniable physical presence.
And within a year, the moral authority of the regime completely collapsed, and they surrendered power without a war.
They just stood there with candles and collapsed an authoritarian regime. It proves that physical human solidarity is infinitely more powerful than any oppressive system, whether that system is a communist dictatorship or a digital technocracy.
So what does this all mean for us? Let's recap this incredible journey we've been on for the last hour.
We started in the paranoid, hyper-isolated, air-conditioned bunkers of the ultra-rich, listening to them brainstorm shock collars for their security guards because they are terrified of the humanity they've isolated themselves from.
We explored how their deterministic philosophies extract our data and our physical resources, turning living topsoil into dead sand, and turning complex humans into predictable algorithms.
We looked at the dizzying, multiverse-spanning power of quantum computing.
But ultimately, we found that the most powerful rebellion isn't a digital war. It isn't fighting fire with fire.
The rebellion is as simple as knocking on a door to borrow a tool from a neighbor, taking a tech Sabbath to reclaim your mind, and looking away from our glowing screens long enough to actually see the people breathing around us.
Which brings us to one final, deeply provocative concept to leave you with regarding the ultimate endgame of our existence.
In elite circles, there's a massive push right now to conquer death, uploading consciousness to servers, extending biological life indefinitely.
But there is an alternative view of the endgame, deeply informed by experiences with 5-MeO-DMT, a powerful psychedelic compound derived from toad venom, often called bufo.
Right, and we aren't advocating for psychedelic use here, but rather exploring the philosophical insight derived from it. What does that experience teach about the end of life?
The core insight from that experience suggests a profound theory about what actually happens when we die. The theory is that death isn't a cessation, but a release.
It suggests that at the moment of death, we finally fully exhale. Our individual ego, the strict boundary of self that we spend our whole lives defending, simply dissolves.
And our consciousness returns to the massive quantum whole of the universe. It is beautifully likened to a single water droplet that has been separated, finally merging back into a massive infinite cloud.
It loses its individual shape, but it becomes part of the immense whole, only to rain down later as part of something entirely different, a tree, a river, another person.
So think about that. If the ultra-elite are spending billions of dollars on underground bunkers, researching robotic security guards, and dreaming of digital brain uploads just to preserve their individual droplet forever, are they actually waging a futile, agonizing war against the very nature of the universe itself?
What if true immortality isn't about walling off the self in a concrete fortress to survive the apocalypse, but learning how to seamlessly merge with the beautiful, messy ocean of humanity while you are still alive?